Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak. This is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, and we're talking about cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are how you perceive the world as a child, some patterns and habits you've gotten into that were based on your summation of appearances, and they're not true. They're how you're living your life inauthentically. This is from an article which I like very much. It was called 50 Common Cognitive Distortions. It's written by Alice Boyes, who's a PhD, and she's translating the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy into language we could all understand, right? Well, thank you, James. I appreciate that. That was very kind of you. Thank you. Hello, how are you? Well, it's very nice to have you with us today. So, we're going to, we talked about last week, which was part one, personalizing, mind reading, negative predictions, underestimating your coping abilities, catastrophizing, biased attention toward signs of rejection and lack of attention to signs of social acceptance, negatively biased recall of social encounters, thinking an absence of effusiveness means something's wrong, unrelenting standards, entitlement beliefs, justification and moral licensing, belief in a just world. We stopped there. So now we're going to go on with number 13, and we'll see how far we get today. What I'd like to do is do a prayer, get us all on the same page, get me all on the same page with you primarily, but we can all benefit from a prayer like this and open ourselves to this information so that we do a good job together. How about that? All right, here we go. God, thank you so much for the gifts we're about to receive in this information. Speak to us directly through some of this information that we may know the next step to take for ourselves to reach our potential. We sure appreciate it. We now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do. We also open ourselves to say we know nothing, for it is not our brains and our egos and our ego child's minds that know it all. It is the you through us, because we are the aspect of you, known as us. We thank you so much for now opening us to the information at hand, having no preconceived prejudices. Put us in that clear space, dear God, that we may hear your voice so clearly. And we thank you so much, and so it is. Amen. Yay. Okay. I hope you all are having a good week. I had a really good one. All right. Number 13 is the cognitive distortion, and I'm going to launch off into my own thing here, but seeing a situation from only your perspective. Now, she goes on to say, for example, failing to look at a topic of relationship tension from your partner's perspective. And I think that's a good one, seeing a situation only from our own perspective. I think a real, true relationship once in a while steps into the other person's shoes. It's easier, I think, for an empath, but you remember that empathy is something that we can develop. It's not something necessarily that we're born with. And I think this is such an important one, because when you see it from someone's perspective, and you'll never, by the way, see the whole thing. I always pull people back when they say to another person, well, I know just how you feel. You don't know just how they feel. Not at all. We never will. But your good intentions must be conveyed through other words, for sure. I can imagine in part a little bit of how you feel because I've been through a similar situation. I am not you, however. We must always work from that premise, right? So when you see things only from your own perspective, I think sometimes we get very dictatorial. We don't realize that other people's times are important too. So I'm going to give you another premise to work from, which is the person you're talking to is always busy. You're interrupting them. So if you go from that premise, you'll be very kind to say, darling, if you would help me out with this when you're finished with whatever you're doing, because I know that's important. I think that's an extremely powerful premise for a relationship with a friend, a lover, a husband, a wife, a partner, or anyone, quite frankly. Number 14. Belief that self-criticism is an effective way to motivate yourself toward a better behavior. Oh, my word, darlings, there are so many people I see that believe this, that self-criticism or making something very harsh for you is an effective way to motivate you to be a better person, to accomplish more, to to have rewards at the end. Excuse me, I have a dog that's wanting to come on up. All right, I'm going to say hello to the Facebook audience. This is Toffel. He's gone bohemian with a feather in his hair, which he often does. All right. Self-criticism. Now, here's what I want to say to this. Your body goes toward pleasure and away from pain. It is wired into your cellular system that's the way you work. Now, let me tell you how that started. You've heard, some of you all have heard this before, but for those of you who have not, here's the way it works. You started out, hello Sheila. Oh, hello darling, I'm so glad to see you. You started out as one cell. Everybody on earth started out as one cell. A lot of information comes to that cell about growth and change. And that cell has a choice, either to divide to be able to handle the stress, or to die. More of you, because you're here, decided to divide. Isn't that wonderful? It decided to divide rather than die. Now, here's the thing. At this very fundamental, essential you, on a cellular level, that's why the cellular experience is why you perceive pleasure as living and something that hurts as dying. Pleasure and pain. All right? You can't get around the cellular experience. It's built in. It's hardwired into you. So what happens when you make your life miserable? What happens when you criticize yourself too much? And let me tell you, some of it's not all overt. Sometimes you don't even hear yourself criticizing yourself. Sometimes when you do this work, you get to a place where the ego child's mind no longer blatantly says you're wrong and blames you and self-criticizes, but it starts whispering insidious thoughts, like you'll never be able to do that. You can't make that much money. You won't have what you want. You see? That's ridiculous. And consciousness is about being conscious of everything in the moment, so you can hear crap like that going by and not just hear it, but change it, because it's a blatant lie. It's just a lie. So when you are self-criticizing, I hope I'm making my point here, you are actually doing something for your body that you don't want to do. It is a demotivator. It throws you right into the middle of the ego child's mind that has you work for whatever reason you worked for as a kid, to people please, to get somebody's external validation, all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely opposite from where we want you to go, which is to use the higher part of you and the ascended self, who doesn't need that kind of thing. You just need a great idea. You just need something you're excited about to develop, to add to the world. So behavior that is self-criticism, and sometimes even harsher than that, is actually giving you what you don't want. It's actually taking you right directly into the middle of the ego child's mind, where it believes you're not going to get what you want. And then that belief propels what? More self-criticism. And then you have to have a fantasy that somewhere out there in the distant future, it's all going to be all right and you're going to get what you want. You understand? So throw all that paradigm out right now as we're talking, my darlings. What is true is this. You have this moment. This moment is a sacred moment. It will not come again in your life. Not this particular moment. What are you going to do with it? You're going to learn something. You're going to grow in this moment. You're going to open your mind. You're going to create something wonderful. You're going to have that multi-million-dollar idea. What are you going to do with it? You're going to love somebody and have that love returned. You're going to make amends. You're going to say, I'm sorry, and really mean it. What are you going to do with this special moment? And there's another special moment right behind it. In my opinion, I think that this is a real waking up factor in our lives. This is something really that makes our lives better. When we realize, wait a minute, it's all about the moment. It isn't about criticizing. As a matter of fact, I'm getting the wrong thing. It's just about this moment. How I am going to fill it to make a better life for myself and all I love. The value I'm going to add in this world. You see? Good. So if you're self-criticizing or doing anything very harsh, you've got to look at all the elements of this. Why are you doing that? You may have come from a family that did that all the time, did you? I know of a man and a woman who came from a family where it was kind of the blame family. Really. That's not going to serve anybody, you know. I even read an article the other day about bad parenting, and they were saying that a mother or father who says, why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be like the woman up the street? Why can't you? Is also quite abusive. It's fostering that. If you heard that enough in your life, if you were criticized enough in your life, do you know what happens to the subconscious mind? You think you need it. That's how this starts. You think you need it. So here you are, 16, 18 years old, and you're going off by yourself, okay? And so you start doing it to yourself because you can't live without that. That was something that kept you in alignment when you were a little kid. Mother and father looked after that. Now you've got to look after that yourself, and you do it the same way. Instead of realizing, waking up and saying, that's not the way to do it. If you're going to be in the energy of the highest and most love-centered self of yours, and the quest is to leave the fear-based self resolve the fear-based self so that you can transcend to this other mind that you are, then, my gosh, kids, you have to leave things off like this, every one of these behaviors. Sheila's writing, she said, I never thought of that. My mother criticized herself, and I guess I picked that trait up too. You betcha, baby. You inherit these things. I mean, they're supposed to know how to live, aren't they, our parents, right? They're supposed to be the ones that have all the answers. And that's why part of the, yeah, good. Yeah, she said, I don't have to do that anymore. Yay, it was true when you were younger. I think a lot of these things are all of a sudden there when we're younger. And sometimes and this may not be you, Sheila, but sometimes they come back around again. It was interesting because I talked to a dear friend of mine, she's a client of mine, the other day, and we were talking about her anxiety. She has a lot of anxiety. And she said, well, if you had talked to me a year ago, I would have told you I was not an anxious person at all. I don't look anxious. I'm not an anxious person. And she said, but now I'm aware that I'm anxious about everything. And what I said to her, I'm going to say to you, if you notice something like that happening, your body hid your anxiety from you because you weren't strong enough to handle it, or you didn't have the right people around you to handle it. Your healing, though, lies in not denying that it's there and not doing the work on you because it comes out in another way. For example, this woman has cancer, okay? But to say, let's go on this great exploration of self and find out what is there, you know? You can head off so much of our misery in our older years if we do the work that we should have done earlier on ourselves, instead of denying and saying, oh, I'm not anxious. Because indeed she was anxious about everything. If she had looked at herself and seen the signs and read the signals and realized that the trouble she was having with people and a lot of other things that her relationships really made her and stemmed from a lot of her own anxiety. Okay, I hope that helps. So it isn't that, oh, all of a sudden I wake up and issue number 321 is called. Issue number 321 has been there all along. We have not acknowledged it. We wouldn't wake up to it, but now we can because we're an adult and we can deal with it. The ego and ego child's mind is not going to deliver anything to you, obviously, that you can't fix or don't have the tools to fix. It's just not going to do it. You're protected that way. Isn't that nice? But these things do come up. So it may have been completely gone away, but you remember it's also very natural if something comes again. I just want you all to know that so you wouldn't be surprised, okay? And you might be dealing with it on a different level because you have evolved and your understanding is much deeper of yourself. Okay. Nevertheless, going back to this, anything negative does not motivate you toward a better future. It's a lie. It creates a lot of other distortions in your life, like not being able to accept reality, stay in the moment. You choose fantasy instead. The future will be better. Vicki, hello. Vicki says, and once you open those floodgates, yes, indeed. Hi, Franklin. I'm so glad to see you today, too. We're very glad all of you all are with us. Okay, moving on now. Almost moving on. One of the things I want to say about your self-criticism. Hello, Becky. I'm glad to see you too, sweetheart. One of the things I want to say is you have to see what you're doing. You can't address self-blame and self-criticism until you see what you're doing. And of course, avoidance steps in, and avoidance is actually another issue where we just don't want to see what we're doing. That really serves against you. It will bite you on the butt in the end. What we're trying to do is give you a nice life. One of the things I've noticed for years is a nice life equals, a balanced life equals a really balanced death. Not that there's such a thing as death, but a real balanced passing. It's the most amazing thing. So why not do what we're supposed to do in terms of finding out who we are and deepening in wisdom and in consciousness? The same thing in my book. Okay. Now, number 15. Recognizing feelings as causes of behavior, but not equally attending to how behavior influences thoughts and feelings. Okay? So let's talk about this one. A lot of times people absolutely believe their feelings. It's as if they disqualify or push to the side or compartmentalize their fine brain, their good sense, and all the other things that contribute to our knowledge, even our physical bodies. They only believe their feelings. I'm thinking of a particular woman whose mother programmed her to think that way, even though when her mother walked in the room, all the air got sucked out. There was nothing left for the little girl. And so she has grown up believing that her feelings are truth. Darling, that's just not true. That's just not true. You know, yes, it is one of the big motivators of your emotional moment, this moment, next moment, next moment. It's one of the big ones. But to disqualify all the other things in your life, no. For example, she doesn't have, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say she doesn't have any guests over. She isolates and withdraws all the time. And she doesn't realize that her isolation and that kind of behavior is also influencing her thoughts and feelings. So what it becomes is one big self-destructive loop. And I don't use that word idly, the phrase self-destruction, because it is self-destruction. She's not taking a knife to herself and going stab, 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 but she is doing it in an energetic way, because people need people. We need to reach out. We need to have a community. We need to have somebody to talk to. So this isolation and withdrawal is giving her exactly what she wants to get out of, but can't, because she continues to do this. You understand? So you get caught in a loop like this. And parts of your wonderful good sense, for example, get left behind, you know? When you believe your feelings exclusively and you're in a loop like this, where's the opportunity for spirit to come in a higher way and serve you and show you and inspire you? It can't get in. You have a solid energetic loop, like the snake swallowing its tail. There's no way to get in there. So how do you fix it? You fix it a lot of times with cognitive therapy, with being challenged that you're doing it. Because a lot of times it's so subtle and you can't even see that you're doing this. You see? Sometimes a good, neutral outsider saying, whoop, you're doing it again, makes you go, oh my God, I'm doing it again. You see? It really helps, because sometimes your body, you know, sometimes you've got such a system that works for you, like this one. This one works. Doesn't make you happy, by the way. But it works. You're alive. You see, your ego child's mind just wants you alive. It doesn't care if you're happy. It just wants you alive within your limitations that it perceived as a child, based on appearances, keeps you safe. Is it true? We have to ask ourselves in consciousness work. Is it true? No, it's not true. You're just fine the way you are. God has everything, including you. You were born with everything you need. Get yourself out of your way. There's no reason for fantasy, because this moment's wonderful and it works. Energy work works. Okay? So, thank you, Franklin. I appreciate that very much. He says you understand what you're saying. You know, Franklin, I'm thinking of someone that lived in the town that I used to be in. And she may be listening, so if you are, I think of you so fondly. But one of the cutest things that was ever said to me is, she said, I listen to you every single Sunday, and I don't understand a word you're saying, but I listen. And I said, well, just keep listening. You'll understand at some point, I hope. If I'm not explaining something well, oh, do please tell me, okay? You guys that are writing on Facebook Live, I appreciate it so much because you can say, I don't understand this, so tell me why this is so. I do try to explain some of these things. Okay. Her note, again, I'm going to repeat this. Hey, Vicki. She says, well, your loop isn't true. Vicki has just said, I understand what you're saying too, but my loop doesn't feel it's true. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, here's the interesting thing about that, Vicki. Thank you for saying that. You know, I would never think to say these things if you all don't give me some feedback. So here's why you're saying, if you see the loop, you're saying, that's not true, okay? You are doing that because we have a psychological thing, a trick we play on ourselves from time to time. We make good things bad, and we make bad things good. There is anxiety with both. What I want you to know is when you indulge in a pattern like this loop, there's some anxiety, of course, driving it because you can't be fully yourself. You're driving a loop, right? So it keeps you from the authenticity that's down here, that is you as the ascended God you are. Okay, that aspect. But equally, you get anxious when you try to change that loop and do an interrupt. First step, of course, is being aware that you're doing it. And then you go, okay, I'm aware. And then you forget. And then somebody else points it out, or you see it again, and you go, oh, okay, there it is again. I'm doing it again. And this goes on sometimes several times. If you catch it every time, you will see what's going on. That will go away. And then another subtler thing takes its place. All of this gives you anxiety too. It gives you anxiety because, number one, you're not being your authentic self, and if you're listening to a show like this, you are trying to have that intention, right? So you are anxious because, you're not living the truth of you on the highest level, but you're also anxious because that's all you know, and you're trying to change it, right? Hi, Barbara. I'm so glad that you're with us today. Thank you for coming. So understand where the anxiety is coming from. It's there because you're not living your ascended self and doing what you should do. It gives you anxiety. Absolutely it does. And now Vicki and Barbara are talking. I love that. I love it. We have such a good community here. And then it gives you anxiety because you're trying to break a pattern that you've known all your life and has, to a certain degree, worked for you. Thank you, Franklin, for saying that. He says, I'm always like that. That's just marvelous that you know. So here's what you do with that. Since you're experiencing anxiety on both ends, and it's quite human to do so, okay? You've got to know which one is the best way for you. I'm trying to make a case for the higher self mind. And even if it gives you anxiety, for God's sake, break some of these old patterns, because you'll eventually come out ahead, even if you experience some anxiety about breaking them. You see, there is, we're all in essence wearing a mask until we don't really. Everybody is, people pleasing, trying to be whatever, or not trying to people please and say, I don't need you. And we all have our devices, right? The bottom line is, beyond all the devices and pretenses that we all use as protection, there is a loving, powerful child of God that you are, right there in your authenticity and your full reality. You don't need to put on, you don't need to read minds, you don't need to personalize and think everybody is saying something behind your back. You don't need narcissism to inflate you, because if you have some narcissism, I guarantee you, you're going to have the back end of that too, which is thinking you're the bottom of a dirty birdcage. Why play these games? Well, there's a real good reason why. They protected you when you were a kid. You learned them from your mother and father, possibly. They protected you from hurt, you thought. And they did to a certain extent, but you're not a child anymore. And some of these things are not working for you like they should. And they're giving you a great deal of anxiety because you know there's something beyond. Here's the real God's honest truth here. You wouldn't even be listening to a show like this if you didn't know that there was something beyond what you're doing. Isn't that exciting? Congratulations. That's your highest self speaking to you. You see? I'm so proud of you. So it behooves all of us then for us to wake up and to go, I see I'm going to experience anxiety, indulging in the issue, which, by the way, entrenches the issue more and convinces you more to use it, that pattern, right, like the pattern we just talked about, or I'm going to experience anxiety and get through it just because I want to live differently, because I'm going to open myself beyond this old pattern and realize I'm just fine without it. And you've got to prove that to yourself. A good counselor can certainly help and support you and say, keep going, I'm seeing a difference. But that we don't live with you. You're going to have to catch these things. You've got to wake up, okay? And hear what the words are coming out of your mouth and why you're doing things. Your motivation for doing anything, for saying anything, and for feeling anything is where the real substance is where the real truth is about what you're doing, whether it's ego, child's mind stuff, or highest self stuff. Thank you, Franklin. Okay. Her example of this is when you think, when I have more energy, I'll exercise. Not exercising will give me more energy. So she's going kind of in a different direction than I did with this, but that's certainly a valid thing that she's saying. When I have more energy, I'll exercise. It's all about your feeling and what you feel like doing, and you don't feel like doing that, okay? But the truth is, exercising might possibly give me more energy, so I'll make a little effort. And I think here's where I'm coming from, kids. When you're working with me, I'm not really pushing you to do anything. I am opening this so you'll want to live the way you must, or the way you should, the way you choose, really, not must and should, but the way you choose to live in that moment. It's fine with me if you say, I don't feel like exercising today. I just don't feel like doing it. I had a darling person. Oh, absolutely, Franklin. Franklin's asking for my email. Email me at Martha Novak, NOVAK.com. Martha at MarthaNovak.com. And you'll get right to me, okay? I was going to tell you a story about something. Hang on. It almost came back. Yeah, I'll think about it again. All right. It'll be a story that'll come up again and again if I'm supposed to say it. So let's go to number 16. Oh, here's the story. I knew it'd come around again. So there was a man that was a professional gambler that came to me and worked with me. And he had some low self-esteem issues, other issues, and he cheated. He had quite a sophisticated method of cheating. The man was brilliant, okay? And I think he thought that I was going to judge that. Yeah, I'm sorry he felt like he had to do that. I have feelings about that too. I was sorry. But in session, my job was just to open his highest self to the point where we could let those issues go, and he didn't need to do that anymore, which indeed he found, which I was very proud of him about. So I'm not going to judge what you're doing. I am going to try to get you not to do it anymore, But it's not going to be through lecturing you or anything else. I'm just trying to find the motivations of why you feel like you need to do that and why you're stuck in the ego child's mind and not transitioning. And again, it's an organic process and it takes a little bit of time. Okay. Time and energy. All right. Number 16 is all or nothing thinking. For example, she says, if I don't get A's, I'm a complete failure. Yes, that's a good example in my book. All or nothing thinking. If I eat half a cookie, I have blown my diet. I might as well eat everything in the world. That all or nothing thinking is very damaging, and it's sometimes not overt, like we're discussing. We're giving you some very overt examples, Alice Boys and I. However, it can be very subtle. It can be very subtle. If you disappoint yourself, it can be abstract. If you find yourself lying about getting out of an invitation or something, what we tend to do sometimes with whatever we have done that has crossed one of our boundaries or denied one of our values, which might be honesty, is that we beat ourselves up. We're a bad person for it. Listen to the absolute prosecution of that. It's like, you are the lawyer prosecuting the defendant. I'm a bad person for lying. You don't say, I felt I had to lie to this person because they couldn't take the truth, or I didn't feel like I could tell them the truth in this moment. I wasn't strong enough yet. That's the truth. That I'll buy. But I'm a bad person is, first of all, a language of children. And second of all, it's not specific to anything. It's just a pronouncement on your character and on your life. And we wonder why we're depressed. What happens is just about that moment, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. It's just about that one moment in time. It's not all or nothing thinking. You got all or nothing from your family. Your mother, your father, the whole family maybe, all or nothing. You, all or nothing. And you didn't even realize, you see, these insidious things we often inherit. And they're insidious because they don't go through our cognitive processes. You don't see, you don't define that as all or nothing thinking. My mother's doing all or nothing thinking. I have a choice to do it or not. No, it just is part of our lives. We accept it as normal. We do it. That's how you live, right? It's not. It's not at all. So I'm asking you that what you do with all or nothing thinking is, first of all, acknowledge you're doing it, ask to be shown how you're doing all or nothing thinking, realize that's a lie, and number 4, tell yourself the truth. And the truth is only going to be about whatever you did in the moment. It's only about that. Now, when you continue to be judge, jury, and prosecutor to yourself, how do you expect to be happier? How do you expect to not be depressed? I'd be depressed too. It would be completely natural. If you're suffering from depressions, my darlings, we've got to figure out why you keep doing this. Did you inherit it from your family, from all your family, both sides? Why do you do it? Does it please somebody that you do that? Not you, by the way. You're trying to please somebody else at your own expense. Is it a placating gesture so that somebody will like you more? Why are you doing it? Is there a perfectionism issue that's driving this, where you have to be perfect? And if you're not, you're nothing. That's all or nothing, by the way. Whatever it is, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a good reason you're doing it. Every one of these, by the way, there's a good reason you're doing it. But the opportunity is right here, right now, to get beyond these things. Okay? Because they're only obvious, so you'll say, I got a problem with that. I got to have that on my mind and address that. I got to see what I'm doing here and do something else. Okay. The next one, fascinating, and this is one of my favorites. It's shoulds and musts, M-U-S-T-S. That's why I changed the should and must I said earlier. It's a choice. It's not a should or a must. For example, Alice Boyes says, I should always give 100%. And she goes on to say, sometimes there's no important benefit to doing a task beyond an acceptable level. Thank you. Absolutely. And it gets us in trouble. I'm just going to, with a moment, I'll go back to shoulds and musts in just a minute in all its glory. But I'm thinking of a story about doing your work to an acceptable level. So I have a friend who is a lovely photographer. This was a number of years ago. She was doing a show, and we were talking about how she should price her work, you know. And I said, well, do you just want to show it? Do you want to sell? She says, I want to sell. I want to make some money. I said, okay. Then let's talk about what you should price it. And I said, you've got to realize you're not known. You do beautiful work. We would like more people to know about you. We would like them to talk about you. We would like to have people comment when that your photo is in their home. Somebody sees it and wants to know about you. So that's all real good stuff. So she said, so what should I do? And I said, well, let's talk about what you think it ought to be. And she mentioned outrageous sum of money. And I said, nobody's going to buy your stuff for that. For all the reasons I just said, nobody's going to do it. She said, but I put a whole lot of time into it. I labor over these things. I tweak them. I spend hours and hours and hours and hours. I spend weeks on one picture. And I said, well, you're going to have to eat that because you shouldn't have. There's a good shouldn't, by the way. You should be aware that your time is your money, and you should have it in quite a balanced form and do what is acceptable. Do as much as you can in a certain given time, but knowing that you're going to have to sell everything for this price, you can't afford to put tons and tons and tons of time and energy into it, you see. You have to be reasonable, guys. So, going back now, that's a little off the subject, but going back now to the shoulds and musts. Yes, she should not have spent so much time on things. The other thing that was driving her is she must make it perfect in her eyes. And it was already perfect in all of our eyes. We never saw anything that she did. She was looking at it with much more expensive equipment. She was looking at it with a jaundiced eye. You know, everything was wrong. Okay, coming back. Shoulds and musts. We should ourselves to death. I should exercise. I should eat right. I should not be alone. I should go out when I don't feel like it. I should have a better job. I should ask for a raise, but I'm scared to do it. I should, have people over, but I want to withdraw. I must get better at eating. I must find a new house. All of this is shoulds and musts are generally 90% of the time, 95% of the time, They're driven by the ego child's mind. If you hear the word should come out of your mouth or must, that is a time to stop and say, what did I just say? What did I just say? Let me think about that and see if there's a better phrase for it. Okay? For example, choice. You just heard me do it. Should, must. No, none of those are true. You have a choice here. All right? Your choice is to go to the gym or not. Not, I should go to the gym. And you should honor the choice of whatever the choice is. Now, why is the choice, that word choice, so important? The word choice is so important because you have several ways you learn and communicate. You learn to take in information, you communicate with the world. One of them is through your mental aspect. Okay? You think. One of them is through your feeling aspect. You feel. And one of them is through your aspect to commit to action physically. You do. It's more than a doer. It's actually committing to action physically. You are a combination of all three of those things, not the least of which is the spiritual and intuitive aspect, the energetic aspect, which, by the way, is all the aspects. Choice brings all of that into account. Choice on its highest level, brings all of that into account. Okay? You want to use all of you. So what happens when you say, I should do this? Can you see you're leaving out most of you? I should go to the gym. Your physical body feels bad. That's the rest of the sentence, isn't it? I don't have enough energy. I didn't sleep last night. I'm not going to feel like doing that today. And giving yourself a break. It's only about today. It's not about the rest of your life. You may have the same decision tomorrow and the next day and the next day. You may never go to the gym. I don't like going to the gym. I don't. You know why? Because I'm an introvert. I do things alone. So are all my extroverted friends going to make me feel guilty about not going to the gym? No. Go to the gym. Have a great time. I understand them. That's great. I'm not going. So, guys, part of this is just knowing who you are, knowing nothing's wrong with you. Rooting out if something is, if it's a cognitive distortion, being emotionally honest with yourself. I think I got an issue with this, you say. So that you can make a decision, a choice, and be fine with it. Shoulds and musts are one of those wonderful signs that come out of our mouths that say, look more deeply at what this is. And I do suggest that you do that, okay? Number 18. Using feelings as the basis of a judgment when the objective evidence does not support your feelings. This is very similar to what I said before, but a little on the deeper side. For example, she uses the example, I don't feel clean even though I've washed my hands 3 times. Therefore, I should wash my hands again. This is an example that may be indicative, she says, of the obsessive compulsive disorder. But whether you have OCD or not, the fact is using feelings as a basis of judgment when the objective evidence does not support your feelings. For example, I'll give you another one that's more subtle. Thank you very much. I love a good cup of tea in the morning. Okay. Friend who had a very bad childhood. Her mother was mentally ill to the extreme. She controlled this child excessively. What she didn't do, another family member did in terms of controlling her brain and her mind. To this woman's credit, she has grown up to create a lovely life. She's talented. She has the sweetest, dearest husband in the whole world. Right? And yet, once in a while, if something triggers her, in spite of what the present moment is, she's back in that house being abused by her mother and her other sibling. She believes those feelings. But she's dragging this to the present moment. Do you understand? None of this is in the present moment. She just had a trigger. Somebody didn't listen to her on the phone if she was talking to the phone company, or something like that is going on. Something triggered her. And all of a sudden, she believes the feelings in the moment all over again. And once you do that, kids, let me tell you, once you don't, what I'm always trying to do with you guys is I'm always saying, let's catch this early. Do you catch it early? Do you catch it when you have the first indication that something isn't right in your world? Do you have can you catch that first moment, 2 or 3, where you are back in the past? Because it's going to create what we call an emotional spiral. And you're going to go on a journey. And that spiral is mania. It's mania. You're used to hearing about mania, right? And you think mania is when somebody winds up. But it also can be when somebody winds down. And you are in a pit and you can't get out of it. And it's a force beyond your control. You know, all that stuff. No, it is that you have let. And by the way, her mother taught her this incredible emotional indulgence. She taught her the way to be. But is it in her best interest? No. She's had to wake up to this, and she's done very well. She's had to wake up to realize, wait a minute, I'm going into it. Stop it, and stop it now. Acknowledge it. Find out what you're saying to yourself. Hear it. Acknowledge it. Tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth. And go do something that brings you back into this present time. What would? Well, I don't know. Cooking something delicious, eating something, strolling through nature, playing with your animal, go throwing the ball around for a dog outside, just about anything. A good book does it for me. Just give me a great story. And you're right in present time. You approach present time through your senses. Now, here's the thing. If you're in mania, if you are absolutely in mania, and most people catch, I'm in mania, when they're in the middle of it, if they catch it at all, you can't do anything about it but let it play out. You're already way up there involved in the emotion of it. You have to wait till you settle down. And then all of a sudden you can say, oh boy, okay, I get it. That's what I did. The whole point, as I said, is to try to catch this on the front end. What's the first thing you experience before all that emotional spiral happens? Is it rage? Is that your trigger? Get real angry? Do you feel abused? Do you feel trapped? What are you anxious about? Because that moment is filled with anxiety and you're feeling anxious about something. Not being heard, that's a common. Whatever it is, wake up to that. Realize that's your trigger. Because if you can say, ooh, that's happening. That's happening. And what I'm going to do is say, okay, that's happening. It reminds me of my childhood. I get it. reminds me of this aspect. I'm even thinking of a story. And then, but what's true? Because that story, that child is trying to inform my life right now and tell me that was true. And I'm saying it's simply not true now. So, what is true? You get it? All right. Okay, I think I can move on. I don't need another story. All right, number 19. Basing future decisions on sunk costs. This happened a couple of weeks ago to somebody who said they were with someone. Who was it? Was it their doctor? It was somebody. And I heard the story and I thought, wow, I certainly would get a second opinion. I'd certainly do something about this. And she said, oh, no, I've invested too much time and money in this person, so I can't possibly entertain another idea. Okay. Sweetheart, it's really important for us to wake up, to know when things are working for us and when things aren't working for us. It's fine. It's just telling us to move on. And we can't believe we've invested so much time and money in something that we have to keep doing it. And yet, many times that's what people say. I've already done this so much. And it's like, no, that isn't even a smart business decision, right? If something isn't working, it's not working. Okay. Number 20. That's my time. Delusions. Let's talk about what she says. Holding a fixed, false belief despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. For example, believing global warming isn't a thing, okay? Or believing you're overweight when you're only 100 pounds. Or, by the way, being that you're terribly thin and lithe and pretty when you're 400 pounds. I mean, all of it is a delusion. Delusions are kind of the kissing cousins of fantasy. And you've got to understand that we think of words like delusions and fantasy as negative, or we think of them as positive, but they're both. If you're going to have one, you're going to have the other, you know. Delusions are really where you don't live in the real world. They both, delusions and fantasy, have a commonality. Fantasy is kind of the path you get to the delusion, right? They have a commonality, which is they keep you out of the present moment in reality. Remember, everything you want is in the present sacred moment. This is where you create. This is where you change. This is where you learn. This is where you grow. This is the only thing that exists. We could walk out of the door and be hit by a bus tomorrow. Not that that will happen. But all you've got is now. And what did you do with the now this last week? Most of us are completely unconscious to it. You see? Delusions are a way to be completely unconscious to it, instead of facing reality. A friend of mine of many years ago died recently. God bless her. All her life she was tremendously overweight. I don't have any, listen, I'm overweight, so, I have no judgment about it at all, but she never would do anything about it. And yet, she was the greatest thing on stage I ever saw in my life. Because I cast her in roles like I Do, which is just two people on the stage and they're married, and it's about the relationship through the years, and she had the most beautiful singing voice I'd ever heard. And I was able to cast her in something like that because after the first initial whoa, when she came on, because she was big, people were so entranced by her because she was such a beautiful singer, and she could act, that she convinced you she was an ingenue. The problem was those devices didn't work as she got older. What do you think happens to that if somebody doesn't grow up on the inside, you see? It becomes a bit of a, it becomes distorted, it's like, where's the real person? Is there a real person? Of course there is. We have got to, guys, drop these devices away and be who we are. Drop these delusions away. That was who I was thinking of when I thought that she was, sees herself as a perpetually 24 years old on the stage, being beautiful, having a gorgeous voice, and yet not taking care of herself in many ways, you see. 21. Assuming your current feelings will stay the same in the future. Not only will they not, but they shouldn't. I'm here to tell you. I think one of the nice things in life is the reinvention of yourself over and over again. Many times it's changing a location or going off to college and getting out of your childhood home and you turn into something else. But why do you need those external things? Why do you realize that life is about growing, evolving, deepening, not staying the same? Opening your mind to new ideas and new feelings about life. Her example is, I feel unable to cope today, therefore I will be unable to cope tomorrow. That is a good one. That's a nice, deep one that I hear a lot. But let's make it even more specific, okay? Let's say you didn't trust that your mother, I'm going back to a client that I did earlier, that betrayed your trust over and over and over again. To survive that childhood, you do three things, okay? One of three things, or all three things, or two of three. You normalize the situation. All homes are like this. You elevate your being in that situation to godly proportions. I'm going to be a good little girl, and God wants me to be a good little girl. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to stand there, and I'm going to help my mom, okay? I'm going to do everything she says. And number three, we generalize everything. That means we will grow up and see all women having the potential to be our mother, all people having the potential to be our mothers. Okay? The fact is, if we're generalizing it, it becomes really important for us to wake up that we're doing that. Because we have to address the original issue. So if we don't, what we do is we drag the past up here to the present. Okay? And we could not, let's say we couldn't please our mother for any reason. Let's say she was highly critical of us. That wasn't the original story. Let's just change the story now. She was highly critical of us. She was on us all the time. We could never do anything right. We grew up with the feeling that we could never do anything right. We're always wrong. We're not smart. We can't do this, okay? We're always self-doubting. We're always self-questioning. And we're in present time. There's an assumption here that whatever you decided back then is what's going on right now. Do you understand that? Can you see that you're doing that? When you generalize like that, you're saying, this happened, therefore this is going to happen. My mother and father and sisters and brothers didn't like me, therefore nobody's going to like me here. It is an assumption. Excuse me. It's an assumption. Excuse me. Taco? Hey! No, squirrel talk. Squirrels. We have squirrels dancing on the porch going out the window. He thinks it's just the most divine thing. All right, TOEFL, stop it. So, guys, just because something happened in the past does not mean it's going to happen here. As a matter of fact, waking up is I often use the image of you're writing the script, right? But of your life by your thinking, your feeling, your decisions, what you do, everything. You're writing the script. Your influences, mother, father, other family members. You're writing the script. But the end to that particular script has already been written. You're going to get what you expect every time. Why are you going to get what you expect? Because people don't have that script. It's because you're changing your energy to create it. For example, if you think nobody likes you, what are you going to do? You're going to be real protective with yourself. You're not going to be out there and giving yourself away and saying, here, let's see what we can do together. You're not going to do that. You're going to isolate, withdraw. You're going to try to protect yourself. You're going to get exactly what seems to be the case. They don't like me. You create it, you see, in many cases. Yes, he doesn't chase squirrels, but he screams at them in the through the door. That's what happens most of the time, Shelley. That's just, he loves that. And we do have a lot of different animals up here. As a matter of fact, if anybody has a way to keep squirrels out of my geraniums that I have planted in my pot plants, let me know, because they are tearing them up. And they are so beautiful. I don't want them to, they're pulling off the tops. Stop that. Anyway, we feed them out there. You would think that they would be a little more gracious, wouldn't you? And grateful, but oh no. Okay, so your feelings shouldn't stay the same about anything. We should wake up. We wake up, we realize what we're doing. If we don't have a loving aspect coming back from us, we ought to look at what aspect we're sending out and how people are misunderstanding us. You see? Sometimes we need a little coaching for that. Okay. Number 22 is cognitive labeling. This also is so clear and so blatant that it comes from your kidhood. She goes on to say, mentally labeling, for example, your sister's boyfriend as a loser, not being open to subsequent evidence suggesting that he isn't a loser, that he might be some sort of nice guy and her choice. Cognitive labeling. Do you understand that children see things very simplistically? And we need to have some guidelines, certainly, growing up. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable. We label things good, bad, right, wrong, all this stuff. But as an adult, those labels don't tend to exist if you are going into consciousness, because everything just is. It's our judgment that we're putting on those things, hence the labels, and how we go back into our childhood to pick them up. You see? Oh, they're not, I don't like him. He does this. I don't like her. She's this way. Whenever I hear any kind of labels about anything, it makes you stop. Because I think everybody in the world, particularly people, which I care so much about uniting, we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy. We want to share love. We want to go back. But everybody's afraid, huh? In the ego child's mind, everybody's afraid of being hurt. Everybody's putting energy into protection instead of reaching out for each other. Instead of helping each other. People are too keen to put labels on things. And I ask you not to be, because things just are. Now, you're entitled to your opinion. That's not what I'm saying. But the judgments that are all over the internet and social media and everybody telling everybody else what to do and how to feel and how to be and shaming people. Oh, for God's sake, do all of us not have the right to live and die the way we choose? We do. Where are the labels in that? Thank you. Okay. Number 23 is something called the halo effect. For example, she says, perceiving high-calorie foods as lower in calories if they are accompanied by a salad. What I used to do was buy a Diet Coke and a cookie. Right? Okay. The fact of the matter is, this is a little beyond that. This is another form of delusion, but it is the way, of thinking, this is really, really good, and where's a halo? I wear a halo for doing this one thing that possibly I don't want to do, so therefore I get to do something else. Okay. Thanks for that good laugh. The halo effect. Things just are, guys. This is another way we, sometimes salads have more calories than anything else. We got to wake up to just what is, and strip away this right, wrong, and good and bad, and all these labels. Okay, Vicky. Vicky says, now you're just being mean. Yes, to myself, primarily, I think. That's very cute, honey. Oh, we have a good time on the show. Thank you. Good laugh. Number 24 is minimizing. Minimizing. For example, yes, I won this important award, but that doesn't mean that I'm accomplished in my field or any good at what I do. You see, that's minimizing. I want to say there is something called magnifying too. Let's talk about these together instead of separately, because magnifying is number 25. This is cognitively exaggerating. And she goes on to say, for example, blowing your own mistakes and flaws out of proportion and perceiving them as more significant than they are. Magnifying is making a mountain out of a molehill, but not quite to the same extent as one of the things we had last week, which was catastrophizing, right? So, I catch people, this is what's so interesting about what I do for a living, because there are just as many people that minimize as magnify. What's with that, It's just something that we do as a protective measure, but it's really not adding anything. It's just kind of a waste of energy. You should have a wonderful, healthy sense of self, balance, pride in what you do in a realistic sense. Absolutely. We are wanting to get you on to just that. That means being emotionally honest with yourself and not having issues like low self-esteem, being tied to my mother that also had low self-esteem and not letting her go even though she's been dead for 20 years, or not being able to accept an award because I don't want to be visible, because I think something's wrong with me. I'm always wrong. I'm a perfectionist because I'm always trying to cover up the fact that I'm always wrong and don't want to be wrong. Life will be over. Look at all the cognitive distortions that could be in this mix. You should be able to take a compliment. You should be able to take a compliment. Just take it. And then it's an energy package that you give yourself to take it from somebody else. And then at some later time, give that away. And then get another one and give that away to someone when you're real sincere about it. I think it's a beautiful thing. We should be able to just stand in who we are. When people magnify or minimize something, I can always tell they're insecure about who they are. And guys, this isn't the time for that. This is the time for waking up and saying, here I am. Good, bad, or indifferent, here I am. And take what life has to offer you. Vicki says, I have this thing where anytime I do something good or feel good about myself, I have to bring myself back down to earth, like I'm not permitted to be proud. That's really interesting, Vicki. I see several things that could be going on there. Can we talk about that? I want to make sure it's fine with me if we end after this, because I wanted to get minimizing and magnifying together. So let's talk about this that you've just brought to the table. Thank you so much for doing so too, sweetheart. If you're not talking to me, I sometimes don't think of these marvelous side roads we should take. This issue could be there for a lot of reasons. So let's talk about the ones that are shallow on the surface right away, and then I want to actually talk to you about a construct that I think could be going on as well. And these things could be related. For example, I had a client that whose mother said that laughing and joking and making fun was for monkeys. She was very dour. She had been, I think she had not been in the Holocaust, but a lot of her family had. And she just didn't want any joking around, laughter, or anything in the house. So my friend grew up to have no humor in her life. Oddly enough, she was very funny. She had a marvelous sense of humor. But it was almost done with a apology at one point for being funny, And she had a hard time, and she still does. She was not a client of mine, but she was a friend. That she had a hard time enjoying her life. She never learned to contribute anything. She rode on people's coattails all the time. And loved their lives and participated in adding a great deal of joy to theirs, but she never did find her own and wasn't very self-initiating to enjoy and gratify herself, by the way. And this goes back to, you're either experiencing pleasure, like seeing a marvelous sunset, it's over when the sunset's gone, or you're gratifying, doing something that's very gratifying, like using your talents, gifts, and abilities, and that's much more sustaining. A happy life needs both, okay? All right. So now, that said, it could be something that, you could have trouble with visibility, with expressing yourself, with anything like that. So that could be going on. You all might want a pen and paper to write down this next construct that I'm going to give you. Because this is a construct that is the difference between the ego child's mind and the highest self mind. So if you will you're going to have two columns. The bottom of the first column, and the first column is your, if you will, pardon me coining a phrase, the unpotentialized self. That's that. The base is fear. And when you crank up the energy from fear, you get high energy. You get high energy, but what's the advantage of high energy? You've got nerves, anxiety, you've got self-doubt in there. High energy has just got all of that, right? Because it's coming up from fear. And if you have it go high enough, raise the energy still yet, you get reactive energy. This is where you don't think about what you're saying. You're just saying it. Okay? You're just reacting. You're not thinking. Lawyers love to get people in that. They reveal themselves, you see, too much, by the way. You just react. You don't think. Switch over to this other column. The baseline, people misunderstand that because they think that when I mention love, I'm mentioning love like between partners. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a real highest self. I want what's best for everybody, global kind of love. That's that base. you crank the energy up from there, you get a peak performance energy. This is an energy that's the best of you, without all the nerves and anxiety and self-doubt and all the things I mentioned. Okay? And if you crank energy up from there, what do you get? You get something called potential energy, potentialized energy. And that means you have the potential for something glorious. Now, this paradigm that I've just given you is quite the nice paradigm for actors, for example, because if an actor is and an actor should act from its best self to play the lesser self, all right, the ego child's mind possesses most characters, but for example, if an actor wants a standing ovation at the end of the play, you've got to have the potential. You have to have that much energy in your body that you come on with, so that there is a potential energetically set for a standing ovation by the end of the performance. But you got to have it throughout the performance, you see, and disguise it in other ways. Same thing is true for a sale. If you want to make a sale, if you're a salesman and you want to make a sale, you got to have the excitement, the wonderful thrill of making that sale in your energy. Otherwise, there's no potential for it. So everything has to be, it's all energy before it is reality, right? So those two things are very, very important. Now I'm going to give you one more construct. I've got 8 minutes to do it. Draw a line across the bottom of the page. Put the word contractive at one end and expansive at the other end. All right? Have some energy go up like that, and at the top, lines go up like that. At the top, write transcendent. Okay. Now let me tell you what that is. The line that goes from contractive to expansive is the ego experience. It's the ego child's mind experience. Sometimes your energy contracts when somebody hurts your feelings, or you're bringing somebody in to give them a kiss and nobody exists but you all in the world. Or it's expansive, which may mean that you're blowing up and being really angry, or you're leaving a big tip for somebody that doesn't deserve it because you feel sorry for them, or whatever you're going to do there. All right? That's the ego experience. Everything exists along that ego line, and it's always indulgent. It's always about you. Always. Always. It's always self-indulgent. That's the thing that's just true about the ego child's mind. No judgment, just true. Sometimes we get our expansive self, Vicki, mixed up with our transcendent self. When something wonderful happens to you and you're thrilled that something wonderful is happening, we can go into that expansive self. If you have been asked to give a lecture at your business, you can go into that expansive self and feel like queen of the world. I always call that queen of the world, king of the world energy. It's a fantasy. It's not true. And you always know that if you're in that contractive, expansive ego, child's mind experience, within 2 days you're going to snap back and be the bottom of the birdcage, because none of that was true. If you're king and queen of the world, you're going to be the bottom of a birdcage within 2 days. But there is something really true, and that's that transcendent self, which can take compliments, which can do good work and know you've done good work, and which can relax and forget it too, because that was only a moment in time. It doesn't say anything about your whole life, doesn't it? Does it? You just did this wonderful moment in time really well. Pat, pat, pat. Good. Congratulations. Now on to the next moment. You see? So something of all of that is what you're doing. I would look, first of all, at what you're doing with the inherited beliefs, and what your childhood was like, and what humor and awards and things like that meant to you, and why it might have been dangerous for you to be proud of yourself back then. Okay? Look at all of that, but I hope it helps. If you want to know more about that, and Vicki, I know, has done this, but you can buy the It series. This is a series you can download on your computer, and I talk in great detail about those constructs and a lot of other things, because we named it the It series because I was in show business for a long time, and agents would always say, Martha, send me somebody with it. I'd say, what is it? And they'd say, I don't know, but I'll know it when it walks in the door. And it's what it is being this energy of potential that I've just kind of given you a general idea. I hope that helps, darling. Thank you. Thank you for the thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we only have 4 minutes left, so I think I'm going to stop right there with minimizing and magnifying. And why don't we go next week into more of this? What do you say? Okay. We'll be here next Sunday at 10 o'clock. Thank you so much for listening and for getting the word around about us. It's just wonderful. Every week I see the conscious community growing more and more and more. And, you know, I'm kind of alerted to, oh, this person is sending, you know, recommending you and sending these shows out. Thank you so much for doing that. That is just wonderful. I do them for that very reason, hoping that you will be inspired to do that. And certainly that's a way you're helping us by getting the word around about what we do here. It means a lot, and I just can't thank you enough. It really is sweet. Guys, you all have a great week, and let's do a quick prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for the gifts that we have received here today, the information, the inspiration in us. You have touched us in some way, and we want to be very aware of all of this. Oh, yes, Scarlett's reminding us of a lunar eclipse tonight and to enjoy it. Thank you, Scarlett. And Michelle, oh, thank you, darling. She says she feels energized after these podcasts. I hope so. So we open ourselves, dear God, to you to say we would like to have the courage and the inspiration and the sense of self to move on some of these things in a clear direction, in the direction of our highest and best selves, in the direction of our love-centered self. No one else can claim that except us who stand in you, love-centered. We thank you so much, dear God, as we give up whatever level of fear and anxiety we have today to you, knowing that you're moving into our lives right now and giving us what to say, what to do, who to be, and what to do next. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of it. We now say this in your name, and in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening or watching the show. We thank you so much, and so it is. Amen. Guys, have a great one. Okay. Have a great week. Stay well and healthy out there. Help everybody. Okay? But help yourself in the mix. Don't you neglect yourself.
90 seconds.
Don't neglect yourself, because God loves you through you and how you treat yourself. You understand that? Okay, good. Take care of your sweet selves. Bye-bye.